I mentioned a couple situations before where you would run into negative numbers and adding and subtracting them. And I had something like, okay, well, let's go through them. If you have a big positive number or a bigger positive number minus a smaller positive number, okay, you're going to get a positive number, right? If you have a smaller positive number minus a bigger positive number, you're going to end up in the negative world, okay? That's it. Now, if you have a bigger negative number, right, minus a smaller negative number, you're going to stay in the negative world, right? Sort of like the positive world. If you have a big first, small second, you stay in the world you started in. So here we started in the positive world for both these, and we ended in the positive world for both of these. Okay, these are both positive, and we stayed there. Nothing changed. Over here, we started in the negative world for both these, and we ended in the negative world for both these. Over in this world, we started in the positive world, but because we were using a smaller number first and then a bigger number, we ended in the negative world. And the same thing happens in the negative numbers. If I start with a smaller negative number and I subtract a bigger negative number, I'm going to end up in the positive world, right? That's what's going to happen. Now, we talked about all these situations, and the way I drew the number lines before, you can draw it the same way with those. Now, there's a couple other possibilities, okay? There is, well, if I mix positive and negative numbers. If you notice all these examples I have above here, both numbers involved are the same sign. -4, -2, -2, -4, 2, +2, +4, +4, +2. But obviously that's not all the possible situations, okay? I might have, I don't know, -2 -4, right? So let's look at that, what that might look like on our number line, okay? If I have that situation, I'm probably going to want to keep my positive numbers to the right and my negative numbers to the left, okay? Because all I have to do is, I know that if I'm subtracting, right, if I'm just subtracting a positive number, then I'm going to end up going that way. No matter where I start, I can start somewhere in the positive world, or I could start somewhere in the negative world, and it really makes no difference where I start. If I'm subtracting the positive numbers, I'm going that way. So if I start at -2 and I subtract 4, I'm going to bump over 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3. I gotta make a new one right there. Okay, so this would be -3, -4, -5, -6. Okay, it doesn't really matter. Nothing has changed. I just get more and more negative. Okay, in that situation. Um, okay, so now what if I had, let's say if I had -2 -1. Okay, if I had -2 -1, what would you think would happen? Again, nothing has changed. I start at the -2, and instead of going over 4, I just go over 1. All right. Now there could be another possibility. What if I have 4 minus -2? Okay. Um, well, I guess one way to think about this is if I have my 4 out here, and let me pick a new color. If I have my 4 out here, right? All right, I'm just going to leave that over to the side for a second, and I'm going to focus on this part of the equation, right? -2, so minus minus 2. Well, minus minus 2 is really just -1, right, times -1 times 2. And you can think about this like, well, -1 times -1, if you know your multiplication, because multiplication is a little bit easier, two negatives timesing each other equal a positive, right? So this would just be +1 times 2. That's one way to think about it. Another way to think about it is kind of similar. If you have -1 times -1, right? You kind of just have -1 squared. And when you square it, you just get +1, right? And in that case, you're really, so might seem kind of strange, but 4 minus -2 is really just the same as 4 plus 2, okay, which is 6. Let's look at that on the number line. I know that this one's kind of an odd one to visualize, whoops, but I think probably the only way I really look at it is if on my number line I start at 4, and normally I'm subtracting 2, I go that way. Well, I'm not subtracting 2 anymore. I'm subtracting -2, so I'm going to have to go that way 2 spaces. 1, 2, 5,